Perfect. So we are ready to start. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. Ahead of the World Wildlife Conservation Day, we are coming together to discuss the importance of conservation and the role we can all play to further this effort. My name is Juana Burga. I'm a Peruvian model, actress, and activist. In addition to my modeling work, I'm an ambassador in Peru focused on protecting artisans who produce sustainable fibers and then export the materials worldwide. Protecting nature and wildlife is a core of mine, which is why I'm so excited to be hosting this panel today, to hear different experiences on wildlife conservation around the world. I would like to introduce you to the panel. Let's start with you, Boaz. Tell us about yourself and what do you do?
Thanks very much. My name is Boaz Paldi. I work at the United Nations Development Program. That's the UN's largest agency. I am in charge of engagement and partnership globally. That means that it's a fancy title to say that I create partnerships. Over the last 2.5 years, those partnerships have become one partnership that I work on, and I manage a conservation fund called the Lion Share that we launched in September of 2018. And have been trying to build ever since. And that's my primary job right now. Since the beginning of the crisis with COVID, I've also been asked to step into various other positions in UNDP. So I've counted that I have about 5.5 jobs now, but trying to concentrate as much as possible on the Lion Share. And that's about it. I'm based in New York, but I'm here now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Ompatile.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, my name is Umpatile Khalaletsang, or shortly you can call me OP. Actually working for Botswana in Botswana. I'm working under Rappa Game Park as assistant conservation officer, whereby I'm in charge of biodiversity conservation education, where I educate employee of OLDM or Rappa, Letrakani, and Damsa mines about biodiversity conservation. That's employees and business partners. And also I do conservation education to school groups from a lower level to a higher level. And also I do rare species monitoring, e.g. rhinoceros. Thank you.
Thank you, Ompatile. Next, we have Olivia.
Hi, I'm Olivia Pinnock. I'm a freelance journalist based in London and a university lecturer as well. I specialise in covering the fashion industry, and particularly how it can become more sustainable. And the last couple of years, I've also kind of been exploring this in the diamond world as well, and exploring how what the diamond industry is doing in this space. I was very lucky last year to be able to go to Russia to visit the Alrosa mines. And I've recently been looking a bit at the reindeer conservation programs that they're running out there, which I'm sure I'll talk to you about in a bit as this panel progresses.
Yeah. Thank you, Olivia. Rabia, tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Juana. So I'm Rabia Hawa. I'm the founder and executive director of the Ulinzi Africa Foundation, which we launched in 2014 as East Africa's first nonprofit that focuses on rangers, empowerment and welfare. And we currently have an anti-poaching operation in Kenya's Tana Delta, which is another reason I started my nonprofit, is to focus on kind of forgotten conservation spaces where no one else is really paying much attention to. Aside from that, I'm an honorary warden with the Kenya Wildlife Service, and I'm also a Mandela Washington Fellow, class of 2016. I did policy, which is something I'm very passionate about because I believe that working towards stronger legislation will ultimately be the key to protecting wildlife and habitats.
Incredible, thank you. And finally, we have Akash. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Akash Mehta. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Fable and Mane, which is a modern Ayurvedic Indian hair wellness brand that we just launched this year. I'm also a UNICEF Global Guardian and used to work in the corporate world for the likes of Dior, Estee Lauder, but now have jumped ship to have my own company that we just launched this year. So Fable and Main, beyond just formulating responsibly, we are actually very much committed to the wild and the wildlife conservation through our own fund called the Fable Fund, which is kind of focusing on tiger conservation specifically in India. So hopefully we'll get to talk a bit about that later, but that's me in a nutshell.
Incredible. Thank you, guys. Well, considering this challenging year, today we will discuss the importance of conservation efforts that, like many other parts of our society, have been impacted by this crisis. We will talk about why we need to work together for a better future. There is a general belief that wildlife protection should only be the job for a specific group of people or activists, right? But it's the time to come together because everyone can help to make a change and make a difference. And this is the time if we haven't done it yet. So we will also look at the multiple ways in which conservation projects can be funded. And finally, we need a new way to address the conversation that puts wildlife conservation at the heart of climate, development, security, and public health. So let's start with Boaz. You mentioned that you are someone who is highly passionate about global issues like conservation. I've read that your different roles have led you to work and visit over 100 countries and really got to understand different cultures. Tell us about the Lion's Share Fund and how you came up with this simple but effective idea for corporations to get involved.
Sure. Thank you very much. So the Lion's Share is, as you say, an incredibly simple idea. It's so simple, in fact, that when we launched it, my son at that point was about 5 years old, and he could pitch it better than I could, because of its incredible simplicity. Animals have been in human advertisement for a very long time. They sell our products very, very well. In fact, 20% of all global advertisement includes images of animals in it. That's worth $118 billion a year. But guess who doesn't get paid from all of that? The actors get paid. We would get paid if we were in advertisement. We would get royalty. You do. The sound technician will get paid. The lighting technician would get paid. The cameraman would get paid. The location would be paid. The animals don't get paid. So we thought it would be interesting to try and create a fund where we ask advertisers to donate 0.5% of all of their media spend for each ad that includes the images of animals. The percentage is, as I said, very high. 20% of all global advertisement includes animals, and many companies use far more than that. One of our partners in the fashion industry uses 54% of animals in their ads, and so there's a vast amount of interest in animals, and as I said, they sell our products really well. So what we did was we launched the Lion's Share. It's an idea that came out of Australia. There is a very nice young man called Chris Nelius who was sitting and watching television at home. He was watching the cricket, which I don't understand, but he seems to like. And he saw an ad that 5 cheetahs were in, and they were selling cell phone usage. They were selling data, and it struck him that this was wrong. That there was something wrong about this. That this was not correct. It was unfair. On one hand, we have all these animals appearing in ads, and on the other hand, we have a severe crisis in nature. We know that over the next decade, if we don't take urgent action, we will lose 1 million species. So he went to his boss, a guy called Rob Galuzzo, who owns a production house in Australia, and he said, "Hey, Rob, I need to take care of this." And Rob, being a very nice boss, said, "Yeah, let's do it." And then they flogged it around a little bit, and finally it kind of somehow landed on my desk. And UNDP got interested, and we managed to build it. So now the mechanism is built. This was in 2018. We did all the building. We launched it. We have since operationalized it. We are now active in various places around the world with conservation projects. But there's another aspect of the Lion's Share that's also equally important, and it touches on what you said, Juana. we are intent on building a community for nature, a galvanizing force for everyone to join a movement for nature affinity. And because of exactly what you said, because the United Nations can't do this alone, private sector can't do this alone, but we all can do it together. And so what we're doing is, as well as really being very active on conservation around the world, we're also in the midst of building a movement for nature that will really galvanize people across the world. I think we're very well placed to do that because we sit in the nexus between the creative industry, big corporations, and the United Nations, and we really can reach a lot of people that way. So that's it in a nutshell. Our ambition is to reach $100 million a year. It's not beyond the comprehension that we do that. If we only had the top 20 advertisers in the world, we would already have $47 million. We have one, so hopefully more will join.
Yeah. So is there ways that people can support this from home?
Of course. I mean, the support that we need now most is for people to know about this. Ultimately, the Lion's Share will succeed if consumers know about the Lion's Share. We hope that the Lion's Share logo that I don't know if you can see it, but I have it here on my lapel. It's a very nice little logo that we're very proud of. That it becomes a certificate of excellence, a little bit like fair trade and all of those certificate of excellence that will be self-monitored. But we hope that it shows consumers that the companies who join, like Mars Incorporated, that were our first partners, like Gucci, like Cartier, that they really are taking action, and together we can have impact. So if consumers support this movement and consumers act on it and buy the brands that are kind to nature, that support nature, that help us kind of really achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve, I think we'll be a lot better off. So the best way to support us is to follow us, to repost us, to really kind of like support the Lion's Share in your own way. We are not asking for donations at this time. We hope that corporations will fund this. This is a brand new stream of funding for conservation and biodiversity, and we hope that that's the way that it continues to be.
Yes, I mean, it's like a blueprint for fundraising for wildlife. And I think you guys are doing an excellent job into making that stamp, and people will realize, especially with this panel and everything you have shared, that once they see, a connections with the Lions Fund, they will know that 0.5% of that has been made on this, commercial or ads is gonna be going to the wildlife conservation. So it's incredible. I'm super happy to hear all
We
of
are
this.
very excited by it. It's a really innovative way to raise money from the private sector, but really allow the private sector to be involved, to take action, to have significant impact where impact is needed most. And although it's called the Lion's Share is not for lions. It's for every animal. It's for biodiversity loss. We work across the world. We have some fantastic projects going on in Indonesia right now, some in Africa, some in the Jaguar corridor in South America. So we're really, and the more we grow, the more projects we'll have.
Thank you so much for sharing this, and that's incredible advice for those who are watching this panel and might want to support Lion's Share themselves as well, or sharing what they just heard about Lions Fund. Now moving on to Olivia, you have experience. You have extensive experience writing about sustainability in fashion, and you have also had the first-hand experience visiting diamond mine in Siberia. I must say, I will never have put together or connect diamonds with wildlife protection. I would love to hear more about the research you have done. You told me that you have seen a unique 32,000 hectares of natural reserve park, which was founded by a diamond company in collaboration with the local government. Can you tell us about the conservation work at this park and how important it is that these projects are done in partnership with the local communities?
Yeah, absolutely. I was surprised too that when I went on this trip to Siberia and I was going to discover all about diamonds, that suddenly I was being taken to go see reindeer. Was a surprising connection there. But the more I learned, that, you know, the reindeer are obviously wild and native to the area there, and they hold huge significance for the ecosystem there, and but also for the communities, very importantly the communities. And I think, you know, it's important that when we're having these conversations about wildlife conservation, that we realize that it's not just about the animals themselves, it's also the environments that they exist within, and that includes people. So in Siberia, there are indigenous communities there who are traditionally reindeer herders. And what the yes, there's the Yakutia National Park, which they call the living diamonds, the living diamonds being the animals, and this is supported by the mining company there. And they've funded this in order to conserve the wildlife, so not just reindeers, but also muskox and rabbits and you know, all the variety of animals that live there, because they have issues with poaching, they have issues with climate change affecting things as well. So this is a controlled environment where they can, you know, breed and live freely, and, you know, remain for generations, because you have the wild reindeer, and then you also have the farmed reindeer, and it's quite important that that those two types of reindeer are kept separate. Otherwise you end up with problems. So part of what they do is tracking the reindeer, tracking their migration habits. They partner with local scientists to provide research on this, and make sure that everything's run smoothly, and that we keep the numbers you know, strong and healthy for future generations, so that indigenous communities can still have their livelihood and continue their ways of living. But it's also just a wonderful asset to have in the area as well, because you can visit it. It's like a little tourist attraction. It's like, you know, going to a wildlife park, and it's run by local people there. So it's a really, really lovely initiative. And that is not the only thing they do as a mining company. They support a lot of conservation efforts in the area there as well. So that was a very surprising find when I went to discover what they were doing for, you know, this incredibly, you know, felt like such a foreign landscape to me. This, you know, huge frozen permafrost environment with all these fir trees everywhere, and it's really quite unique and amazing, and it's incredible to see that being preserved so respectfully by the diamond miners there.
Yes, I mean, everything you say is super interesting, because as a woman, I mean, we love diamonds, and as a humans, we love nature and we love wildlife, and we love, if we want to preserve all of these without going against, you know, what our future, because we need development. We need to help all these countries who they have a richness in the land, and we can use this richness, but at the same time we cannot take for granted. And it's great that we can actually give back. And I think a lot of people does not understand or go against mining, but if you do an ethical and responsible mining, I think things can work together, right? And we can make everything work in a more ethical way, which is why it's so important that we all are coming here together to share this experience, how every company, every organization, every projects that each one of us are doing is connected to protecting wildlife. So I have another question. What do you think private organizations should follow this example and take part in conservation projects?
I think, you know, what is interesting about this is kind of, as you touch upon, you obviously the mines could be a real negative influence on the area there. And as we know, that is very true in many other industries. So much of what we what we get and what we enjoy comes from nature. You know, just as Boaz was saying about how we love our animals and our commercials and everything, you know, we love, you know, products that, you know, come from the earth that are farmed and all these things. And, you know, I think we really need to, I think what's great to see in Siberia is the way that they have partnered with the communities, as we were talking about. They've partnered with scientists. They haven't started something new of their own. They've really gone and done the research about what is needed here. Where are we having an impact, and how can we be a force for good in that? And I think a lot of companies don't necessarily connect the dots with their supply chains on where they're having impacts in the world. I see this a lot in the fashion industry. You know, that I think philanthropy is nothing new, and corporate social responsibility schemes are not new, but I would really like to see more of a connection between the resources we are taking to make our products and the lands that we are using to do that, and a giving back in those spaces, rather than you know, having a kind of destructive impact on some places and then funding, you know, other completely unrelated schemes and charity initiatives. That's not to say they're not worthy causes, but I think we really need to think about, you know, immediately, imminently, what are our businesses having an impact on, and where can we be a force for good in that rather than a destructive one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's really important that all our viewers are understanding these ways and how we can all work together, like I said from the beginning, for a better future. So now moving on to Ompatile, who is a ranger at the Botswana Game Park in Botswana, which is part of the Diamond Road, a network of 8 conservation sites established by the Diamond Company, the De Beers Group. This network expands over 722 square miles of critical habitat in South Africa, Botswana, and Namibia. Ompatile, as a ranger, you have a real on-the-ground experience with the success of protection programs, but I assume it doesn't come without challenges, and especially now when there is a funding issues and a big decrease on ecotourism for this crisis. Can you tell us more about what the Botswana Game Park is, as well as share with us your greatest joys and challenges in your role at the park?
Oh, thank you very much. As you've just said, I work for the Botswana Orapa Game Park. Orapa Game Park is in a mining town in the central part of Botswana, in a district called Boteti. And Orapa Game Park was formed in 1985, and the size is 45,554 hectares. And our objective is to have conservation area around the mine lease area, and also to manage and utilize the natural resources. And another one was to do conservation education and research, and also provision of recreational facilities for the local communities and company employees and business partners, and also a breeding place for rare species. Rare species, we're talking about vultures, talking about rhinos, both species, and others. We can talk about, the list is endless. And then our core areas in Orapa Game Park is wildlife management, which we are looking at the carrying capacity of our area, stocking rates. These are the things we are doing when we talk about wildlife management. Conservation education, whereby we are designing and implementing a conservation education program to school groups, which is also in syllabus with the government schools. We also do bedding research in partnership with BirdLife Botswana, We do aerial counts or aerial survey and ground counts. Aerial survey, we do them once a year, whereby we have to fly over our park and count each and every animals that we have for management purposes. So ground counts, we do them almost once a month, driving with a vehicle and count whatever we come across, because those help us to manage our area. We also do development of roads and fire breaks, which helps or which are being used by our tourists or visitors which visit our park. Fire breaks, obviously, to protect or prevent the area or our park from wildfires. And we also do identification and eradication of noxious fauna, flora, e.g. datura, those poisonous plants or invasive species. Because if you don't manage them, they end up invading the area and animals will run short of food. And we do soil erosion monitoring, and also we maintain our park infrastructures. And we also design and produce conservation material, e.g. posters for education, brochures, information pamphlets, DVDs about our park. We also manage problem animal in OLDM in the whole operation. Problem animals, we've got things like warthogs, we've got things like kudus, even snakes in there. And we also do guided tours for company visitors. And we also do a daily physical inspection of boreholes and water holes where our animals drink water, or boreholes which we supply our animals with water. And we do daily monitoring of rhinoceros. And we also, lastly, we do.
Oh yeah, sorry to cut you, but I just wanted to follow up with, I know like the amazing work that you are doing at the Botswana Park, but right now I know that with this crisis, with the pandemic, the tourism has almost been gone this year. And have you experienced that the support from private sectors is more important than ever to help conservation programs like the one you're working on at the park?
Yes, it is important for private sectors to actually support the work we are doing. Like now, what we've got here, we are in partnership with Oxbow Investment, which most cases they'll help on vegetation assessment, researches, and with some of those activities for wildlife management purposes. And since this year we're in the pandemic, COVID pandemic, most of people didn't really enjoy coming into the park, because in most cases the park was closed and the enjoyment of the park wasn't really there. But all in all, we get private partners helping us a lot in managing the wildlife.
Yes, so it's a very important way to help the work that you are doing right now. And how it's been with the wildlife itself? Because I mean, if we don't have tourism, we have, I mean, just the animals, like the wildlife in freedom, kind of. How has been the impact of 2020 on the wildlife under your protection? Like, it's been different?
It's been different. And I will say on the wildlife side, it still helped us. It didn't have impact on us because the park was closed. We didn't have visitors coming in. So we had to attend to a couple of issues, management wildlife issues, which I'll say we couldn't have not done them. So I'll say one way or the other, this worked for us because we're able to do a couple of activities which needed the park to be quiet.
Thank you so much, Ampatile. Thank you for sharing this. We want to move to you, Rabia. You are a real inspiration for young generations and for other female rangers. You founded the Ulinzi Africa Foundation, which is East Africa's first NGO to raise awareness on the challenges faced by rangers and their fight against poaching. You gave up your career in media to work in conservation. What inspired you to make this change?
So yeah, that's a question I get asked all the time. And I'm a very visual person because of my background in media. So some things haven't changed. And so I'd like to show you actually some of the reasons why I decided to make that transition. So I'm just going to do a quick screen share, if you don't mind. Here we go, and I'm just going to do like can you see that clearly?
Yes.
Okay, so because I'm very visual, I will just take you through it and show you a couple of pictures along the way, because I imagine staring at me would get pretty boring at some point. But the picture that you see on the far left of your screen is actually what made me make the decision to be more involved in conservation. I was working in the media by that time for 8 years, and being a broadcaster, reading the news every day, and our media house also had a newspaper, and seeing absolutely nothing in the newspaper and hearing nothing on the news about the reality of what was going on the ground, and then seeing it in person for the first time and learning that this was an everyday occurrence. At the time, this is between 2012 and 2014, Kenya was losing an average of 8 elephants every single day to poaching for ivory. And the fact that this wasn't anywhere in the media really affected me. I needed it to be in the headlines. I needed the public to know about it. Also, because in Kenya, wildlife is a public asset. Wildlife belongs to the people of Kenya, and the Kenya Wildlife Service is the government parastatal charged with the protection of wildlife on behalf of Kenyan citizens. And so I really started getting more into it. I wanted to have first-hand information from the front lines. So I would join rangers on patrol. I would live with them in their camps. And of course, we would come across poaching incidents, and every once in a while, we were able to save 1 or 2 elephants, like you see in the picture on the bottom right. That's an elephant that walked right into our camp. She had been hit by a poisoned arrow on her leg, so it was pretty septic. And it was the first time that I got to see really how government parastatal of the Kenya Wildlife Service are facing this challenge, and how they're able to be on the ground to treat these animals that are in distress. And so I wanted to be, to kind of galvanize the Kenyan public to supporting the Kenya Wildlife Service more, and also to be aware of what was going on the ground, because most businesses, corporates, even individuals were not really supporting these charities that were on the ground, or even the Kenya Wildlife Service. So I then started using my, my platform in the media, aside from talking about it on radio and making stories on television, and getting other media houses also to cover these stories. I then started writing about it in one of Kenya's national newspapers. So this is the Star newspaper. And I can safely say that every single day there was a story in the paper about a poaching incident. This was one of the biggest stories that I did when Kumquat, who's the elephant on the top left that you can see, was poached alongside her two sisters, leaving behind her orphaned calf, who now is thriving in the wild. She's been rehabilitated. And it was the first time in Kenya's history that we had put the photograph of a poacher suspect as a most wanted image in a national newspaper, which sent him running literally into Tanzania. He crossed the border, and then we had to work together with the Tanzanian authorities to now, identify where this person was and then bring him to justice. So finally he was caught. The ivory was recovered from his house under his bed. And I can say that it was thanks to the Star newspaper carrying this story that I put forward. It had never been done before. People were feeling very antsy about, do we really want to put a most wanted picture in the newspaper for a poaching incident. And I'm happy to say that it was really something that moved a lot of Kenyans to wanting to be more proactive in finding people who are involved in the illegal wildlife trade and ivory trafficking and poaching incidents, and really just bringing them to justice. So, this is one of the many reasons that I really just made the decision to make that transition from the media into conservation. I wrote in the paper for a number of years, and I felt like we were making an impact. Kenyans were very well aware about the poaching situation. They were getting involved in campaigns and petitions, and even attending public hearings when we were doing the Wildlife Act amendments. So, I felt like I was quite effective in what I wanted to do in media, and I used my position in the media for good. And I then just wanted to focus on my work in conservation, which was, in a quite a forgotten place of Kenya. It's called the Tana Delta, where Kenya's longest river meets the Indian Ocean. And I can show you a photograph of this beautiful, magnificent forest. I call them the forests of terror because when I first came here about 11 years ago, there wasn't any organization willing to work here. It's a very dense forest, very raw, very much largely unexplored, and very close to the Somali border. And of course, as many of you will know, we have had some not so wonderful incidents around this area with the militia group Al-Shabaab. And Al-Shabaab are a very active force, I would say, in this area, which serves as a deterrent for most, most corporates, most organizations wanting to support or work in this area. But for me, I started exploring these forests before militia groups were even a thing. They were just forgotten forests, and really important for me because it's where elephants would come to give birth. One of the only locations in East Africa where you can find a leopard, lion, elephant on a beach. And for me, that was really worth protecting. So that's another reason why I just made a full transition into working in this area.
That's incredible. It inspires me a lot, especially with being a female ranger, being on the ground and really seeing these horrific images and kind of being part of all these. I think it's truly inspiring for everyone that is listening to this panel. Sarah, what's your message to the young generation, and how can we make sure that everyone plays a role in protecting wildlife?
I feel like everyone has a really important role to play. Of course, now we're in the middle of a pandemic. Everyone is working and just living from home, spending all their time or most of their time in front of a screen. Use that screen for good, explore, learn about active organizations that are on the ground, projects that are happening on the ground. Aside from signing petitions, it can be as simple as just signing a petition to support an ongoing movement to maybe protect a certain animal. Like the Free Kavan movement has been huge, where share just came in, and they managed to get this, what was called the loneliest elephant in the world, from a zoo being in chains for 8 years to a wonderful sanctuary in Cambodia. And all it took was galvanizing public support and global support through a petition. So never underestimate the power of a petition. Don't underestimate the power of your voice. I would say with the younger generation, one of the greatest things that you could do to support conservation organizations and projects on the ground is use the power of your social media. You know, follow accounts and share them on your timelines. Help people fundraise. You know, again, with the whole COVID situation, a lot of us have been really hard hit with a lack of donations coming in, which directly translates to how much impact you're able to have on the ground. And I'm gonna just show you one final photo, if that's okay.
Yes, and I think to complement what you just say is that every change starts from us, right? So especially for the young generation, and like you say, before we didn't have social media, and social media it's becoming one of the most powerful tools right now, where we all can connect from every part of the world, and we can use this tool to make a difference, to make a change. And like you say, I mean, you did this transition of changing from media to becoming a ranger and being on the ground. You don't have to do this huge transition, but you can start from home, from sitting down in your sofa, watching your phone, and really committing yourself into a cause, right?
Absolutely. And I want to show you this photo because this is proof of how social media can work. This vehicle right here that you see on the left-hand side of your screen, raised online, just from an online campaign, just because people were, you know, sharing the fundraiser and the campaign online. So, and this is the one vehicle that's able to now mobilize these rangers to cover a space of over 40,000 acres, protecting wildlife, like our little coastal lions here who are very shy that you can see hiding behind the palm trees. So don't ever underestimate the power of social media and what your reach on social media can really do for wildlife and conservation, I think is my biggest message and takeaway for the younger generation today.
Thank you so much, Rawa. So shockingly, 97% of the global wild tiger population has been lost in the last 100 years, leaving us only with 4,000 tigers left in the world. Akash, you founded a beauty brand that is committed to giving back to the wild, and your Fable Fund supports wild tiger conservation and their critical habitat. What does Fable in Maine stand for, and how are you giving back and protecting the wildlife?
Yeah, so Fable in Maine, we just launched this year, but me and my sister have been sort of activists since we were born, since we knew about animals. We basically have always fell in love with them, and we wanted to commit ourselves to helping them as much as possible. But our father was in the beauty industry, so I've been kind of raised with the beauty industry since I was born. My dad's been in the beauty industry for over 40 years. So I actually started after my university working in corporate companies, Estee Lauder companies, Dior for many years. And I was kind of losing touch of that kind of corporate, I don't like to say corporate social responsibility. I like to say corporate social intention. I felt like, you know, a lot of these kind of big businesses weren't necessarily focusing on the roots up, but they were focusing a lot more on the marketing of it. And I was getting a bit frustrated. And with me and my sister, we decided, you know, we need to do something about this. But of course, to make a lot of change and to be a catalyst of change, you need revenue, you need capital. So for us, I thought, you know, actually let's together create a business that not only is committed to bring beautiful beauty products to the world, but is actually a conduit to give bigger change, bigger impact. And for us, it was with tigers, mainly because when we were creating Fable in Maine, we decided to not go for the route of a brand muse or a celebrity. Our muse is the tiger, the most fascinating, incredible animal of India. And for us, when we did more research about it over the last couple of years, it was shocking to see we went from 100,000 tigers to now less than 4,000 tigers in the wild. And, you know, there are more tigers in the backyards of people in America as pets than there are in the wild. And I think that's something that, although unfortunately a lot of the damage has been done, it's not the end for tigers. And, although, we can work very strongly to make sure these are not an endangered species for our children to come. But also, I think for us, it's about making sure our brand has a mission that actually does the change. And that's why we created Fable Fund, which is a sibling founded, me and my sister founded the fund. And we're committed to kind of working with local organizations, not the big giants of today, but actually ourselves committing our own time and energy to understand what's needed. And for us, I think one of the biggest things that we've seen is that kind of human, wildlife, and conflict that is actually one of the biggest causes of poaching, but also why tigers are in decline. For example, a story would be the tiger would come into a local village and kill the local cattle. The first step is for the villagers, because that's their only source of income, is to go out and put poison, fake meat, to kill these tigers. And the simple act of, yes, we need to work towards helping tigers through sanctuaries and other means, but actually just a simple form of education, talking to the villagers and offering them other ways of perhaps, let's say the tigers do end up killing the cattle. Can we offer them 2 cattle in exchange, not just 1? Or can we perhaps get better fencing, that they have better systems to, avoid this issue so they can live in harmony? So that's what we're committed to. And we've started the journey. It's been just the beginning. We've built some solar paneled water wells for the tigers. We've already delivered a couple of hundreds of ranger packs. A lot of these rangers that are really doing the best to kind of help against poachers don't even have torches. They can't even do their duties to be active kind of rangers because they don't have the equipment. So we've already delivered them solar panel torches, proper foot gear. So this is just the beginning, but it's more of I would say, as much as it's the business, it's more of me and my sister's passion. So it's actually more exciting than our business plan. As much as numbers are good for the beauty business, I'm more excited about what we can do with Fable and Mane that's actually helping tigers in the wild.
And also I see on the Q&A box that is people really saying that they absolutely love the products and the design.
Oh.
I personally have tried the products and they are incredible. They smell incredible. And the story behind is just wonderful. So how has your dedication to supporting causes like animal conservation impacted in your business?
Definitely. I mean, it's kind of, for me, I kind of don't really focus on, and that sounds odd, but I don't focus too much on the business impact. I focus more on the consumer impact. So as much as it's great to have, a lot of companies, and I've worked in companies where it's all about, if we do some wildlife conservation, what's the ROI to us as a business? Do we feel like we give back and we get some money? And that's why we actually, when we launched the brand and products, we didn't want to do this, $1, we give $1 donation. We didn't want to make it a marketing ploy. We wanted to say, Rabia said so perfectly, it's really about education and using social media, using blog posts, using influencers to get the message out there of tiger conservation and what we can do even from our screens. And this year, pretty much, unfortunately, even I had plans to go to India. I had plans, we were going to film a documentary. We had all this stuff planned and everything. I can't even go to India, probably not for another year. So we've had to be creative to say, how can we still make an impact, but from our screen, from our home? And I think that's our biggest thing. So I'm really focusing on measuring that impact of social media impact for sure, and how that's impacted people's and our consumers. But also in turn, of course, what we can do to raise awareness and also funds for helping actual tiger issues that exist today as well.
Thank you, Akash. And it's really great to hear that the support that you're doing for the wildlife conservation has such a big impact in your business, but also you are sharing such a beautiful way that the focus of your own business, which is Fable and Mane, and it's everything supporting tiger conservation and wildlife. And hopefully this is encouraging for other brands to follow and support conservation initiatives as well, and to make sure that rangers such as Ompatile and Rawa can continue their excellent work in protecting biodiversity for generations to come. Now, I would like to open up the floor to the panel. So I encourage everyone that is watching who wants to ask a question to post it in the Q&A chat. And while we wait for these questions, I have 2 questions that I would like to ask you guys. The world is on lockdown. What can people be doing from home to help protect wildlife? We know we have talked about social media is very important, but what they can do each person from home to help and protect wildlife. So who would like to answer?
I can go first. I think my first thing I would say is just read, and educate yourself. I think, even seeing the images that Rabia showed, it's when you open yourself to seeing the truth and what's actually happening in the world is then when you can catalyze more change. So I think the first step is educating yourself, and there's so much information. There's a lot of false information. So that's also important to make sure you're educating and kind of filtering the good and the bad and the false and the truth. But nonetheless, do check. And then once you fact checked enough, spread that message. I think WhatsApp and, Instagram stories, etc. Share. It costs us nothing, but it does a lot of return in the future.
Yes. We need to open our eyes to everything that is happening in the world. It's sometimes we just think that we are in this bubble, but we are not. We are all together, and it's a huge world where everyone can come together, and really with one little step, we can make a huge difference. If anyone wants to answer these questions, or should I ask okay, Ravi, yes.
Yeah, I'd like to actually say that aside from obviously social media, a lot of organizations on the ground are really in need of certain skill sets. Many people write to us and ask if they can volunteer on the field. And of course, many times that's not possible because it's a very high risk job. And unless you're willing to sign like 1,000 indemnity forms, it's pretty much impossible. But what you can do is offer your skill sets. A lot of us have like a lot of photos, a lot of footage, and what you need to have an effective social media presence or kind of education and awareness campaign is good kind of packaged video and photos. So if you have skills like video editing, skills like even social media marketing, if you have skills like writing a press release, you can offer your skill set and volunteer with organizations that are on the ground that would need those kind of skill sets, which are remote skill sets where you don't need to be on the field, but you're still supporting conservation in a very active way.
Thank you. And if we need to make a one resolution for the planet and the animals we share it with for 2021, what should we aspire to do? Who would like to answer? Yes, Boaz. Oh, I think you're in mute.
Yes, sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Always the problem. I think, everything is connected. It's not conservation separately, biodiversity separately, climate change separately. We have a very severe crisis that we're facing. Frankly, the COVID crisis is a walk in the park of what will happen if the worst of climate change really comes through. There's a very important part of biodiversity conservation that is directly connected. We need to conserve 30% of our landmass, 30% of our oceans in order to really move the needle on climate change. I think everyone needs to be aware of that. I think we need to all work together as humanity to try and stave off the effects of climate change, to fix the issues of nature. I think, if I had a magic wand, I would start with taking extreme climate action as quickly as we can. We have an opportunity with COVID to perhaps reset, perhaps rethink if we want to move back to business as usual, or we want to move back to a future that gives us sustainability and the ability to give our children a planet that they can live on right now. And it's probably our last opportunity without sounding too doomsday about it, but we need to take this opportunity in 2021 and move the needle on conservation, move the needle on climate, move the needle on biodiversity loss. Everything needs to happen now. This is our chance. COVID has kind of given us an opportunity to do it. Let's take it.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's like I say from the beginning, it's the time to come together and no fight against each other, right? Because every person, every company, every foundation, it has the same goal at the end, that is saving the world that we live in. So everything is connected and is one ecosystem that we need to protect to be able to have a future. So it's wonderful to have you all here and share all these experiences. And I have one question from the panel for you, Boaz. Does Lionshare have a database of brands who do ethically pay the animals in their ads?
No, that's not really our job. Our job is to try and help brands to take that first step that Akash was talking about, to really get involved, to have impact. And so we celebrate the brands that do that. We celebrate our partners that do that. We celebrate brands that really take action. We're not we're not sitting in the judgment seat and holding databases of those who do and those who don't. We want everyone to take action. We think everyone can take action, and we encourage them. The way that Akash had set up his business is the perfect way to move around it. If you want to join the Lionshare, that's another perfect way. Or supporting the Rangers in Botswana is another fantastic way. Rabia needs our help. It's all stuff that we can do, and let's not judge those who don't, but celebrate those who do.
Yes. And we have one question for you, Rabia. One of our schools raises 40,000 annually for their partner village in Nepal, doing a 48-hour sponsor run. Vividly documentally progress in Nepal to keep school communities and donors motivated. Do you know of wildlife projects that will fit such a partnerships?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I highly encourage. I always, whenever people approach me saying, look, we've got X amount of money and we want to donate it, I always tell them to be more project based rather than organization based. Because the thing is, when you donate to an organization, some of your funding can get lost into administrative costs and overheads. That's just a given. If you then you have the option, then if you want to have like an open fund, or if you are specifically wanting to fund a specific project, like for example Akash's human wildlife conflict programs or like the fencing program for the tigers. So being project oriented is really important. And for sure, I mean, you could just contact an organization and say, look, hey, I have X amount of funds, what can we do? And then you get a couple of options. Like when people approach me, I give them options. I say, you can fund a lion collar to mitigate human wildlife conflict. You can help us fund a ranger's salary for a year. You can help us fund food for 15 rangers for a month. We can then give you a breakdown. And then based on that, you as the donor or the sponsor gets to decide, this is how I want to use my money. This is where I want it to go.
Yes, thank you so much, Rabia. So that concludes our event today. With the Natural Diamond Council, we'd like to thank you all, our panelists, for being part of this important discussion. Every person here is supporting wildlife in different ways, but we all are working together for the same cause. You have inspired me, and I hope also all of you listening in to see how we can all play a part, even if it's just to influence one other person, to understand why we need to be prioritizing conservation worldwide. Thank you all and have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Everyone.